A very special show for you this week. This week, anyone who has read Ani.Mystic might be familiar with the famous Matawhero. And I'm back in New Zealand, and we are here. If I spin around, we're going to take you on a tour of Matawhero's incredible power project, which we wrote about. So thank you so much. Welcome aboard.
Kia ora koutou to you and to everybody. It's always good to have you. It's been too long.
Yeah, we were just saying, 2.5 years.
Too long. To me, it's been too long, but it's been a great 2 years. And so many blessings have come since the last time you were here. And that just makes me happy. So it's good to share with you the next layers of what we're doing.
Well, even just up here on the top, if I spin this around, you have been busy, sir. And it is a beautiful morning. I was just saying to Matawhero that I've been in New Zealand for 2 weeks. And this is the thing Polynesia does, right? Like, no word of a lie. It has rained pretty much continuously every single day. I've been in Auckland, and for people who've been to Auckland, the only thing that makes them as drivers worse is the rain. So it's been a challenge. But I knew by the time I got down here to Whetu Ariki that it would be like this.
Beautiful day.
It is a stunning winter's day. So,
stunning winter's day, yeah. We had winter, I think, last week.
Yeah.
And it left as quickly as it came. So it's starting to warm up again, and the first signs of summer coming is the first flies. So
right.
I saw my first few flies a few days ago, and that's our indicator.
Right.
Things are shifting again.
Cool. So lead on, sir. Let's go for a walk.
Okay. Well, how about I'll start with what we've got here. So the material that we have here, I've been harvesting, getting ready, is to allow us to continue to complete our construction. So it's Manuka, native hardwood. The most versatile resource that we have. We're going to be sort of adding to the palisade fencing, the kuwatawata, and building some more of our whare, our houses. It's important to talk about this Manuka is because the principle was to only use native materials, locally resourced, but because it was all cut down and and the land use was changed, we didn't have a lot of it. So Manuka is really the only resource we have. But now Manuka is so valuable because of the Manuka honey and the bees that a lot of people don't even want to cut that down.
Yeah.
And so the challenge to build our power site, which stays true to the principles of using natural resources as much as we can, is that we have to actually create our own and plant our own natural resources. So in the last 2 years, that's what we've done. We've put in about 10,000 Manuka seedlings.
Oh, wow.
And my principle is I'll use about 2% of what I put in the ground to continue building, which I think is fair enough. I'm putting way more in than I'm going to use, and to give gratitude to the Manuka Nation for the materials. So when I harvest all of this, there's always a karakia. There's always a conversation with the grove of trees to let them know what it is that I'm wanting to do and utilize the resource. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt better that I can say I've planted 10,000 more.
Yeah.
So
it's a good way to open the conversation, isn't it? It's like,
yeah,
let's do this as a trade. So this is some of the new stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, all of this fencing here is new. This is the sort of, we've got some, this here is a kōwhai tree. This comes from the seed. This is seeded from the oldest kōwhai tree we have in the power site. So this is
awesome. This
is us replenishing the new generations, which is down there a little.
The guardian grandfather tree, I remember.
The grandfather kōwhai, that's it.
Speaking of grandfathers, this is one of your father's carvings?
Yeah, so my father is, he's the carver, and he loves to throw his hand at it. So he's, decorating it up with some of his work.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Now
Cool.
we've also, around the rims, we've put in about 10,000 native plants just around the power site. This whole area was just a paddock for cows, and there were no native trees, so to get them back in here is to bring the life back into the soil and the Maori. So the Maori is the life force, of course, And what we've planted here, we've got this row of, this is called harakeke, or actually this is whaariki. It's a form of flax, and this is all for matting.
Oh, cool.
So I have a really difficult job finding mats for our pa, for our whare, because no one makes mats anymore. And if they do, they're plastic, oil-based. And so the biggest challenge was, well, I'll have to grow the flax so that we can weave the flax to make our own mats. And that just takes time. So I'm happy now we've got our what we call a pāharakeke, which is our plantation. Now, what's really interesting about the flax too is flax has a stomach and a back.
Oh, really?
And when you plant it, you plant with the stomach facing the sun and its back away, and then it grows healthy and strong. And within Maori culture, of course, we have a lot of sayings which talk about how can we grow if the birds can't feed off, the plants, the native flax and so forth. And flax itself represents the family to us. So if I show you, this is an example. So this is the back.
Oh, yeah.
It's flat, and then on this side it curves, it's rounded, which is where the sun rises on the east. So,
oh, yeah, so it is.
So so it has a face, and you face it to the sun.
Yeah, cool.
And then you have the older shoots are the grandparents, then you have the parents, and then in the middle all the young ones come up. And so flax represents the whānau, the family.
That's brilliant.
In that respect. So yeah, that's
so when did these go in? Because again, like 2.5 years is a long time, but it's not a long time in plant world.
These are a year. These
Nice.
are a year old now. So they've had to fight because when all the native material was originally cut and it was turned into paddocks, it overexposed the land to the sun, to the heat, dried out all the land. It changed all of the underwater aquifers and the springs, so the water wasn't replenishing and coming up where it used to, and so the whole hillside has just been so dry and brittle that these plants have had to fight to hold. And now that they're coming though, it brings back a lot more the modi, which brings back the life. The waters are now coming through the top, through the plants, and there's all the water shifting underneath us as well. And I've always believed that the closer you walk towards your goal, the closer your goal starts coming towards you as well. And so for us to heal the whenua, the more we're putting into healing the whenua as we can, the more the whenua begins to supply healing back to us as well. That's fundamental. So the parsite is this is just a small scale of what we're now doing in the bigger scale. So we're now working on the entire riverbed, on the riparian planting. We've gone through a lot of our sacred sites. We've got a team of 4 of us, and we plant thousands of native plants back, and we're clearing out some of the old pests and invasive species.
So what are you planting in the riparian zone?
So we've got mixes of everything pretty much. The heartiest things is flax, that's going to grab and hold. Ngaio is a good one. We've got cabbage tree, or tikoko as we call it. Lots of manuka. Those are good nursery crops. Yeah. And so as nursery crops, they'll hold the land, they'll create shelter, which allows some of the other broadleaf native plants that we can put in underneath. Now we're pretty much going from nothing to creating the future forests, which is what really excites me. And for me, in order for us, so there's 200,000 hectares, which is the traditional tribal lands of our people, that was confiscated, and as a tribe we were then left with, we've got 2 acres of land as a tribe. We're going through a process with the government now that the government recognises its wrongs, and it's looking to return 17,000 hectares of the 200,000 hectares. So it's a step by step, generation by generation. Now our vision as a tribe, we did a survey. What is the most important thing to us as a people? Is it jobs? Is it employment? Is it health? What is it? And surprising, the thing that came out the top was the healing of the land and the return of our native forests.
Wonderful.
That was fantastic. So from that day onwards, it's always been in our vision to restore the native forests, because all of our forests have been burnt, cut down, and pine has now replaced it. And this pine is owned by international corporations. So our vision,
on the hilltops,
you can see it, all the replanting of their pine.
Yeah, yeah, you can see the replanting up through there.
Our plan, of course, is to reclaim or purchase back, or the government's got to give back some of the land, and then we're going to transition it all into permanent cover indigenous forests.
Yeah.
And so, but I know that before we can work on the larger picture, we've got to start at the Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
And for me, the parside is the Sacred Heart. And to invest our hearts and souls into this shows the commitment to the whenua, that we're now ready to take this and to move it across the entire tribal boundaries and tribal lands. Now, how long will it take? 7 generations is our goal for me. So I'll be haunting this place for 7 generations, and then I'll say, look, 8 generations.
Well, then you've got to make it nice if you're going to be around for that long.
Yeah, exactly. So the parside has that significance for us. It's not just about the parside, it's about the whole historical value of our ancestors, our tribal lands. But it all starts right here.
It's when you work at the level of the field, it's fractal like that, like you change this piece and it makes it easier because it changes the rest of it. So it's absolutely the way to do it.
And it's also our chance to learn, and we have to relearn how to be indigenous. And so how do you start? Well, put your hands in the dirt first of all, plant a tree and watch it die because you didn't know how to look after it. And we've had a little bit of plant loss in the journey in the last few years as we're growing as a people. Thankfully it's minimal. I would say about 5% of the plants we put in. By those 5%, it still hurts.
It hurts, but when they die, because hey, my kill rate is a little higher. When they die, they're still teaching you. They're still plant teachers, because it's like, what did I do wrong? Yep. And then you don't kill the next one.
That's right. And it makes you be more conscious and more cautious and caring, and so
yeah, this is the view. Good to, oh, look at that, look at the, gosh, it really, I haven't been here either. Like we were Matawhero, we came out here once, we had some tea and then came out and said, come and see the parsite. And I'm like, you know what, maybe the best way of doing this is to go get the camera, go get the GoPro, which I had in the car anyway, so that it's fresh for me to see as well after 2.5 years. And yeah, you have been busy, sir. This looks amazing.
There's a lot of shifts, a lot of changing with it. Now, because there's no preservative in the wood, most of the actual whare, the little houses, the palisades, will only last in the ground for maybe 5 to 8 years. So we're coming up to that now, around about 6-7 years. And so I'm in a rebuild process. We've pulled down some of the original whare and we're now rebuilding those whare. Same with the palisade fencing. This hillside here we've planted so that the native plants are starting to grab and starting to come forward.
Oh yeah, we can see more of the flax.
Which is great. I wanted to put in a pond. Mm-hmm. So this was my agreement with the ancestors that as true as we could be to the original parsite and the ways of our ancestors, can I have a pond and a waterfall? And there may be a little bit of my own investment into that. And they agreed. And if they didn't, then we'll talk about it when I get across there. Yeah. In the meantime, bringing water onto the parsite was also, to me, important.
Part of the magic, absolutely. It does, but so one of the things we're noticing, and I actually write about this in Ani.Mystic as well, Vine Deloria, who's a total island elder and theologian, would say, and it's true, that when you bring sites like this, or so-called natural sites, back into living and into custodianship, you bring species that were previously believed to be extinct or really rare back, and water, particularly for like birds and microbial life and frogs and so on, is essential, right? And so it's all part of the project. We're starting to get, James sends me videos. I've been away for 3.5 months, but we're starting to get we've got a menagerie on our new ponds, and like black swans and things that we've never seen on our land before. And it's like, what happens? This is what, oh yes, the path.
Yeah, and it's a moving target for us in terms of the participation. We can stay true to the footprint of the traditional pa, the traditional materials, and then we've still got a lot of other work to do, and our own sort of creativity we're bringing into it.
But so one of the things that I find so inspiring about this project, right, is that it's not a museum piece, as you say. Like, so, like, this is your land, you're from here, and so how you build a pa is how pas are built on this land.
Yeah.
It's not a museum piece. So that's the important bit that I think makes it so, like, internationally interesting, is that it is part of that new old way of thinking.
New old way of thinking, absolutely is.
Or as Charles Eisenstein would say, a new and ancient story.
Yeah. We could spend a lot of time and investment with bolts and making very pretty looking palisade fences and making them permanent and making them tannalized so that they won't rot and we won't have to change them out. And none of that appeals to me at all.
No.
None of that is true to the heart of my tipuna, my ancestors who sweated it out.
Yeah.
And who didn't have the best of resources and made do and had to replenish it. And we've had a lot of discussions about this, about permanency, making things permanent by putting in tannalized posts and things like this. And I says, no, the point is that we have to engage every 5 years in rebuilding. We have to commit, and we have to watch things decay, and we have to replenish those things. It's not to have it so perfect that it doesn't breathe, breathing in and out. It's got to do both.
That's not a pa, that's Whetu Workshop, and I like Whetu Workshop.
Exactly. Now, at the same time, I'm using as many resources as I have to try and be innovative. There's some parts of it which are purely like I'm creating.
Oh, this is the waterfall.
My own little waterfall.
Oh, look there, you've graduated past cable ties.
Oh yes,
I can see.
We're back onto our proper rope now. And still, this is not where I want it to be yet, because we have to grow the flax to make the muka, which is the rope, which we can then use, and then we have to preserve it. So this is natural fibre rope, but it's not from our own. But again, in 3 years' time, you'll come back, we'll have fully grown harakeke, then we'll have, now the journey will be to, as a family and as a tribe and as friends, to come and sit and then to just strip the bark and to strip the harakeke and to make it. And that's all a part of what it's about. So step by step. Yeah, but we're graduating from cable ties.
It's so good to be back. And it really does look and feel more in place, deeper. There's still a lot to do. The conditions. Is it going to be a good waterfall? I don't know. I've never done it before, and I'm trying to figure out what I do, and we'll see. This is a bit where the ancestors say, well, that's your gig, you go ahead and do it. Maybe that was their plan all along. Maybe you get to the end and go, this was a mistake. This is why they don't do it. Well, yeah, exactly. And that's the learning as well. And I'm okay with that as well, So in the meantime, there's a lot for us to do to carry on. What I did want to do was to learn the prayer, the karakia, that will bring the water through the underground reservoirs and then let it come up as a spring. And I haven't learnt those yet. It's still to come. Yeah. So I've still got to prove myself, I think. But I do want to have a place where I can sit under a waterfall and look out over the lands of my ancestors and just think, oh, it's a nice day today. Yeah. So we'll get there. We'll see how it goes. So when we first came and I introduced you to this kōwhai tree, so kōwhai has this beautiful yellow flower, which is where Maori get the word for yellow from. It's based on the flower that comes from the kōwhai tree. This particular kōwhai tree is an old gnarly tree, and it never bloomed very much. It may not look like it now, but we're going through winter. But we've collected the seeds and we've begun to, to grow
the next generation from it, which is fantastic.
What was the germination rate? Was it good?
Oh yeah, no, it was everything we've planted from those seeds have come.
That's excellent.
And so they're what we're using to begin planting across the entire riparian.
Brilliant! That's
so
good
this
magic.
is the granddaddy of the seeds for all of that.
As
Yeah.
you say, there's no flowers at the moment, but have a close up. We got a lot of plant nerds who listen and watch, so there we go. How old? I asked you this last time. How old do you think this tree is?
Yeah, I don't. No one knows. It's been here so long that we don't have a clue. I haven't done a core sample or bore it. I don't want to either.
No.
All I know is that when I began to build the pass site, originally I was going to cut it out and then just replant. And then while sitting on that little hill, I heard the voice say, "You can't cut me out of here. I'm the oldest living native of this pass site." And so I repented of my ignorance, and then in all the years that our family have lived here, when I put the first fence in, was the first time I've seen the kōwhai bloom, which to me was a tohu, a sign that the most ancient ancestor native of this pass site agreed with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And since then, the seeds have come forth, and every year the flowers have bloomed, and it's just, I feel the weight of this rākau guiding everything we're doing here. And now that we've brought all the friends around for native friends to join in, it's an important part of everything that we do here. And it's like me, it's gnarly, it's not a pretty, it may not look pretty, it's, you know, raggedy, and it's broken in these areas, but it's beautiful. That's what I love.
Yeah, my guess, and it's just a guess, is like 80 to 100 years, right? Which means it's not that far separated from the last time the pa was in a living context. So it is like it's held that fire through those decades.
I agree.
Until,
Now,
there you go, the pond, Lake Matawhero.
Lake Matawhero, that's right. Now, of course, I'm also thinking of the future for my grandkids. And myself and my kids, and that we wanted a place to swim. And I thought, well, Gisborne is known for, or the Tairāwhiti region here is known for a rock slide called Rere Rock Slide. And that's on our neighbours' tribe. And it's an amazing rock slide that you can go down, and everyone loves it. And I wanted one of my own. So we made our own one in here. This is our own little slide of ours. So
yeah, this is going to work, isn't it?
I had no idea. We haven't tried it out yet.
The waterfall might require...
We've got to have a pump for it.
Yeah. But the rest of it's going to work.
Well, for me, I already hear the laughter and the joy of my grandkids, who will appreciate this more than what I'm doing. We've got trees here which I've already seen one of my great-great-grandkids falling off and breaking their arm. Now, I'm not trying to jinx the future, but I've seen trees that they'll be jumping and crawling on that I've just planted today that I'll never see grow to their fullest. And so that allows me to connect with the 7 generations that are to come. And I absolutely believe that I can enjoy the future now, but I've got to take time to sit and to look, not look inwardly, but also to let the images and the visions of the future come to me. And that connects me to them and them to me. Just as my ancestors have connected their time with me as I've sat here, and they've shown me what they did in the past when they were here. And so there's no time difference when the spirit is working. And so that's where it's been a real joy to do this with the laughter in my ears. Absolutely fulfilling.
Yeah, amazing. And I like that, right? So that's that sort of idea that we stand in between, almost like a bow tie, the ancestors and the descendants, and you're in conversation and connection with both, and that's how you are. That's how you situate yourself in time.
Yep, exactly. Now, last time you were here, we had the watchtower that we had up here. The pahu. Again, the wood only lasts for 6 years, so we're now rebuilding that. the drum itself is just over here, just on
yeah.
the ground here. And so it's, once again, in this area here is going to be another whare that I'm going to build. That's the tohunga. So
Yeah,
that's
the wizard's house.
Yep, that's the wizard's house. And then I've got to rebuild over here, and I'm doing those two again. So it's an ongoing work. It shifts and evolves.
Yeah, we'll come back to there on the left. I'll show you some of these. So the one that I slept in is being, oh, hello. Another foreign visitor. They're pretty though.
Yeah.
I actually saw 3 giant peacocks sitting on a farm fence on the drive up. 3 kind of just very lazy looking peacocks enjoying their morning. It was quite impressive. So actually I'm so glad, because even I can't fuck up a GoPro, he says famously. I'm so glad that this is going to be exposed more or less correctly so that we can see the uprights on this. So this is Monaco as well?
Yep, Monika.
Monika, yeah. Monaco's a place in England.
What I've done, again, is this is in serious need of our rebuild. But I have a friend of mine who is a prop maker for movies, and he's been involved in some Maori features recently, and he needed a roof, and he knew that I had a roof, so he came and did a deal with me. We did a barter trade. He took my roof off here to use for the movie, and in return he's brought me some raupo, which was a traditional roofing material, which we don't have here because all the swamps were drained for the farming.
Oh, right, of course.
And so I've not had access to raupo. So he's bringing me some, and he's bringing me the raupo plants to put in our pond so that we can grow our own, which will then help to replenish all of the materials that we have. What's great is the movies that he's doing are all Maori productions, and so little bits of the parsite are being used on productions elsewhere. Apart from that, we also had a film that was done here by a friend of mine too, and the movie was Henikura, and it was a traditional sort of period following the journey of a young wahine, a young woman through her maturing as a woman. And so it was quite an honour to have them come and film in here. And it's great that it's still being inspiring some others, and materials are being shared and used for that purpose, which means it goes beyond itself. And
yeah. Well, last time you was here, you were saying that, other iwi would come by and it was threatening to spark some inspiration across sort of like the rest of the country in terms of these kind of projects, right? And I mean, there's been less fraternizing these last 2 years, but is that still the case? Like, is its reputation kind of like getting cut through? I'm just gonna, the ones that are still, oh, I can see what you mean about the mats. Yeah, they're gonna be good once you do them right. But just gonna give people a little look-see of these. Do you want to talk about the roof?
Yeah, this is Monika. So we have the Monika Trunks and the Monika brush. Monika was never traditionally used for roofing material because you need a lot of it to thatch it to make it waterproof. What they used to use was called raupo, which is a swamp plant, and if you want waterproofing, get a plant that grows in the water. But because all our raupo that used to be around here that grew in the swamps have all gone because of the farmers. So I don't have access to any of it. So at this stage it was use the Monika and then grow the raupo, and then eventually it begins to evolve back to the proper materials. My ancestors didn't have the luxury that I have of a 4-wheel drive to drive 100 kilometers to get me some material, and so I like that I've not been able to conveniently be able to do things like that. It puts me in their sort of position about having to be innovative and creative and use what you got around you, but also the consequence of not having and living with it. And realizing we don't have to always push it. Sometimes we have to make do with what we got and make the best of it. And nevertheless, I've enjoyed this material and learning with it and using it and appreciating it and evolving it. And that's the thing about patience too. Sometimes You can't build things. Oh, we're used to a society where you want a house built in 6 months, and you want to push things, and you want convenience, and you want ease and comfort, and I realised the only ease, comfort and convenience that I can guarantee is my own mind, my own heart. And if I've got that right, then I'm good anywhere, and I'm good everywhere, and I'm comfortable where I need to be. And tamanui te rā always dries me out when it gets too wet, and then the rains always come when I'm too dry. So I appreciate it all.
Yeah. One of the notions I've been sitting with this last year is the idea of healing at the speed of nature.
Yes.
Because I don't think it's true healing unless it is at the speed of nature. I think so it goes for humans, so it goes for paths, I think. Like it takes, if you try to like alter time in a violent way, it doesn't ever stick.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another thing that I've also found in experiencing with the Pathside is that when you connect yourself to a project like this so intimately and deeply, you reflect it and it reflects you. And so there's some challenges in our community out here. We're an indigenous community, and the greatest cause of death is suicide in our community, our young people, and so depression is a very real thing for us. Its causes go back very far, and even in my own self, I've had my struggles in the last few years and difficulties. So the Pathside is a place of healing, but it's also a mirror. It's a mirror to me and what's inside and what I've been going through, and so the rebuild. And that's where I felt, as a society with what we're all going through, the great reset that's occurring throughout the world, the need to rebuild ourselves. It's timely that we're in this position that I have to rebuild. Because you go through your winters and then you wait for the sun to come back out so you can, rebuild your whares and clean them up, and then you can endure the next storms that come. And I do recognise that there are more storms that are coming for us as a people. So the skills of patience and time are beneficial, not just to me, I hope for anyone who is able to come and experience and feel and enjoy, and also share of their heart with the meaning of this kaupapa, the purpose of this place. So I'm excited now because sometimes I don't get prompted to do much, and which means you just do nothing, and then you watch things need fixing, but I literally feel like it's not time. You just got to let it wait. And about 2 months ago, I got the call that says, right, now it's time, start harvesting again, start recollecting. We're going to rebuild these whare, we're going to get things back up to speed again. You've needed to take time for yourself, and that's why we didn't encourage you to do a lot more. But now it's time, and so I'm grateful for that, because when I come down here, I can hear them and I can feel them. And then they call out, and I get lonely sometimes because you don't hear from them for a while. You're like, oh. And they're like, don't worry, we're always with you, always here. But they have come in our dreams to me and to my partner Ariana, and they've visited us, and we don't feel so alone like that. So I'm excited now because they open the door. Because where am I going to get the next lot of resources from? And I don't know. And then all of a sudden, I turn the corner and they say, here it is, it's been waiting. Now you can begin harvesting from this collection. And that's what we've got up the top there. So now there's a new life that's come back into that. We have to prepare. We have to be able to look at sustainability and self-reliance, and learning the old skills, how to make a rope. I can't go to Bunnings and just pick up a rope when there's no supplies because the trucks can't afford the petrol from Auckland to bring it to us. That's the practicalities of some of the difficulties that COVID has introduced when the supply chain broke down. And so it may not seem like a lot, but those who have the skills to be able to you know, work with the traditional resources and materials, I think are going to be quite valuable to themselves, their families and their communities. So,
and it's in the field now. You do that, and it's something that's brought back to earth, so it's easier for other people to do. It's one of those things, because it's not even just getting the rope from Auckland, right? It's getting the rope into the country from China in the next couple of years.
Exactly. So we're growing our own rope. Sorry, China.
Yeah. I know it's a GoPro, so just pretend this is a well shot, because honestly the view along the river is incredible. It's so good. I'm so glad we got a good day for this. I probably would have done this even if it was a bad day.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we've had a bit of rain, so the river is still a reflection of the long-term vision we have to heal the river. The river is clogged, and like our veins, it's giving our whenua, our land, a heart attack. And so it's going to be an ongoing issue.
Because you were saying boats could get up here 120 years ago.
Oh yeah, the rivers were deep, they were clean, they were fresh, they were powerful, there was life within them. It was the means of travel for our people. We were river people. We're not river people anymore. We've lost the traditions of the canoes, the waka. We're now road people. There were no roads for our ancestors, so the river was everything. And when we turn our minds away from the river, when we're not conscious and we're not intentionally connecting with the river, then we don't flow as easily as ourselves. And so what I love about this site is we're constantly listening to the river. We're engaging with the river all the time. We're also feeling it. So we feel when it is dirt, you know, and full of silt, when it's clogged, and when it's powerful, we can feel that energy with it too. But a lot of the other work that I do is along the riparians. We're riparian planting, and we're clearing areas, and we're beginning to identify the future forest areas that we want to put our indigenous forests in. And so we're looking at how we can better improve the flows of our water as well, so the hydrology, innovations that we could bring in that could support that.
So one of the things I remember from when I was here last time is the Aotearoa is beautiful, and you look at these kind of like, I'll do it this way, these sort of green Lord of the Rings hills over there, right? But that's actually a collapsed landscape.
Yeah.
And that's why the river is no longer 40 to 80 feet deep. It's because we take the native forests out of the uplands, and the uplands rain into the into the river and clog it up. So it's a colonial impact, and it's lovely in the tourist ads when you see the sort of helicopter flyovers of these beautiful green hills, but that is a collapsed landscape. That's not what it looks like.
That's right. I mean, it's nice and green when it's spring and autumn, and then the erosion occurs, and with the extreme weather conditions that were happening now, of course the impacts are a lot more devastating in shorter periods of time as opposed to over time. So that's the danger. So that's why there's such a strong push now to establish for us, you know, permanent cover forests. So we're actually, the plan that we're working on, and that since you were last here, I've been working with forest research entity on transitioning all our forests into native, and we're basing it upon a three forest model, which is based on our constitution as a tribe. We have what we call the Ariki forests. So the Ariki is the lord of the forests, the Arikis. Those are the sacred groves, sacred trees. They'll never be cut down. There's not many traditional sites left with old trees. So where there are, those will become the future seed sources, and they hold the Maori of the forests. And so that's where we have our, what we call our tuahu, our altars, our traditional altars. And the Ariki forest will be interspread across the land. The next layer of forest we call the Rangatira forests. So the Rangatira forests are more like tōtara forests. They're selective harvesting. So continuous cover, selective harvesting. Indigenous materials, indigenous rākau wood, trees, in their strength. And that'll become more of the dominant crop, as opposed to pine, which we want to eventually just phase out totally. And then we have what we call a toa forest. The toa is a war party. So the toa is the one that's actively engaged, it's on the go, it's moving. And that's where things like our rongoa, our medicinal plants, our healing plants, and that's where our short-term plantation crops will be. So there are some plants which only have a short duration, and they're indigenous, so that's where those ones will be. And that's where we can also look at using for biofuels.
Right.
And those sorts of natural values which we can put back into the land, and we can move that quickly without impacting the forest as a whole. So each has a place, each relative to the nature of the plant and the tree. And so if you've got Kodi or if you've got Matai, you've got long growing trees, then they will stay long growing. Katia and Tōtara, which are midterm, 90-year to maturity, and then they can last for 300, 400, 500 years. And so we work to the nature of the tree. And then you've got your short-term bushes, and that, which will, every 3 or 4 years they go. So that's the sort of transitioning plan we're looking at bringing in across to heal the land and to hold the land.
That's interesting, because like one of the things I'm interested in that was actually mentioned in Ani.Mystic as well is that sort of perennial annual is a European categorization of the plant kingdom. But if you look, so in Ponape in Micronesia, for instance, the plant kingdom is categorized based on like number of times of contact, so that the forests in the uplands of the island, which are a little bit more spooky and haunted, they don't spend too much time up there, are plants or plant beings that they would visit a couple of times a year, and then closer to the coast are the sort of more high-speed ones as well. And there's a kind of mid-range between them. So it's that same sort of idea of categorization based on speed and use, almost like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is where I slept. Amazing. Yeah, actually, you know what? It's good to not have the roof on it, so that we can sort of see the full dimensions of it. All right, now talk us through this curious square hole, because that was cool.
Yeah, so did I mention how it came to be?
That's the story I want. I think last time, yes, but that was in a member video. So tell us about it now.
So in the process of building the whare, I had to listen to a lot because I didn't know what I was doing, which I think is a good place to start. And I didn't have access to a lot of information on how to build traditional whare, especially relative to my tribe. Each tribe has their own little techniques and way. For me then, in listening, I heard things like, okay, you're going to use yourself as the measure. You're going to have your posts from your knee down in the ground. You're going to have the heights according to your height. So build, did all that, and then I did a 3-day fast in here. And before that I heard the message which says, what I want you to do is dig a hole inside the whare. So okay, I dug a hole, and this was over a period of about 3 or 4 days. And it says, right, once you dug the hole, I'll tell you what next to do. They don't give me the whole plan right up front, because I think I would know too much then, you see, and they know me better. So they say, no, we're going to give you what you need when you need it. Dig the hole, what am I going to do next? And they says, right, well, what you're going to do is you're going to create a channel in the front where you're going to heat hangi rocks. Then you're going to put them in the front of the channel, and then you're going to sit inside of it. You're going to go and collect kawakawa, which is one of our healing plants. You're going to lay a platform so that your head sticks through the platform, and you're going to put the kawakawa leaves on it, and you're going to pour water over it so it drops down onto the rocks, and then it will steam up. You're in Papatuanuku, you're in the heart of our Mother Earth, and you're going to allow her to draw what needs to be drawn out of you. You're going to use the steam and the kawakawa, which will open up, and it'll help infuse you. And I'm like, okay, I've never heard of this before, And then it wasn't until after I had done it, then I found the research which talked about the different sacred fires and the different umu, what you call an umu. So an umu is a oven, an earth oven. Some umu you use for food, like a hangi, which is where you put your food in the earth oven. This umu was for yourself. It's a purification process. And so more amazing experiences. And so now now I'm in the rebuild of this, and I have to rebuild that again, and then we can get the ceremonies going again and come back and do it.
Because from memory, it was when a relative who's a Maori historian came by and said, "Oh, you've built an umu," and you're like, oh,
yeah, he's a teacher. He teaches the reo, he teaches the culture. And so I was just sharing with him, and I says, "Have you heard of anything like this?" And he goes, "Yeah, that was blah, blah, blah." He starts talking about it, and I'm like, it's good to get the validation. I appreciate the validation after I've done something, not because I feel I need it, but just to help me clarify it, help me understand it, and to refine, because some of what I get through is very specific, and some of it's general, and the specificity comes afterwards, and that just improves the value of it. It just depends on the day.
It's the nature of spirit contact, right? Like, as you say, sometimes it's super clear, and other times it's a feeling or a guidance. And you don't need the validation or confirmation to know that you're in spirit contact, but what it does is somehow like strengthens the channel.
Yep.
So spiritualists in the 19th century would know this, that they would, and we teach this to members as well. It's like when you're doing spirit contact, especially at the beginning, ask for like specific validations to happen, just so that you know, oh right, like I'm dialed in, I'm dialed into the right signal.
Yep. Yeah, the intent that I have is as true as I can be, as is practical to the kaupapa, then that's what I want. And when I mean as true as I can be, as practical, they say, well, you can't do it exactly the way we did it because you don't live in our day and our time, and you don't have the accesses or the knowledge that we had, so we're going to have to work with you with what you've got to get you to that point. And then it'll improve over time. And that's what they've done. They've taken an IT geek and they've says, we're going to teach you stuff that you've never been taught, you've never engaged in, you were never given access to because you were an urbanised young Maori city kid breakdancing on a piece of cardboard in the street. And now I'm throwing you back on the land. And it's going to take you time to learn. Teach your son and your daughters now so that they don't have to go through their life and overcome their own conditionings to get, connected. And so there is a little bit of a piece of me that's a bit upset that I'm disconnected. Or I've been disconnected. It's no fault of ours. It's consequential to the times that we've lived in. But I grew up without the language, without the culture, and where being Maori was not the most positive thing to be when you were put into a box. My baby sister, who's 15 years younger than me, she grew up in a period when she only went to Maori language school, where kapahaka and the culture is being revived, and it's something that Maori are proud of, right? So I'm a part of that X generation that didn't have that. So I've had to fight hard to learn and to reconnect and try to understand. And in that fight, it's made me more committed and passionate, that's for sure. But you feel the deficiency, and but that deficiency is not undermining anything that I want or do, or that I want to do. It's fueling my desire.
It's part of the story, right? Like, so when I was, we were kind of told to build a little permaculture farm. We had this lovely little life in London, build a permaculture farm in southern Tasmania. And part of the reason for that was, if I can do it, literally anyone can do it.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not saying it's the same for you, but as you did just mention, you had a career in IT and you're a city kid. And so it's a very different context because this is ancestral land, but it's the same kind of idea that it's part of the story. If you can do it, who was grown up divorced from the culture, anyone can do it.
Exactly.
And,
the conditions, I would say, is humility and the willingness to listen to the whenua. So one of the first things that I felt I learned was to know the source of mana. Mana is the empowerment. And when you've been disempowered because of colonization and alienation and urbanization, all those Asians, you got to go back to the source. And so I learned for myself a few principles. One of them was mana atua. So atua is creator. Mana is strength from creator. So that's the first principle I was given. So when you lack strength of your own, look to atua to give you the strength. And you were given qualities and gifts from the creator. Your tino rangatiratanga, your determination, your ability to choose. You've got freedom. You've got freedom to do things, to act. And that's God-given, creator-given. So trust that. So I did. I says, right, well, I'll talk to you and guide me. The second one was Manafenuwa, which is gaining the strength from the land and acknowledgement of the land. So when I talk about mana, it's the land acknowledges you, because the land is the entity that determines whether you have a right to it or not the other way around. You know, I think there's a principle which sometimes says that we dominate the land, but I believe it's the land who chooses us. The land just takes time, because once you reach a point where you disrespect the land will fight back, and then we all suffer. You know, the whole cities suffer when the land decides to fight back. So you have to get validation from the whenua, the land itself. And how do you get that validation? You feel it. I feel it inside. It comes up through my legs, and I feel the strength of the land inside of me, and I feel the health of the land. And then I've heard the voice of Papa Tuanuku speak. So when I plant, Manafenuwa is acknowledging what I've planted and letting the strength come to it. And so that's my communication and connection with the land itself. I talk to the land, and the land talks back in land language. So mana atua, Manafenuwa. And as I've been learning these principles, that grounds me. And then the next one is mana whakapapa. So I get the strength of my ancestors. For thousands of years on this land, I have come to recognize and learn that my people have eaten from this land and have bled on this land, have sweated on this land, and their bones are back in this land. And it's still here. And I'm now a continuation of that. So I draw strength from that knowledge and that relationship, the whakapapa that I have, which says in this great universe with these new photos that that have just come to us, well, from the James Webb Space Telescope, I'm positioned in a time and in a place, and there's a reason, and I'm a long chain connected me to the past. Our original ancestors were the Uri Taniwha. You know, they came out of the rivers themselves right here, and then they became humanized, human formed, and then they became us. So mana whakapapa. And then the next one that I found is, so you got mana atua, mana whenua, mana whakapapa, and then mana tangata. So that's getting the strength of support from my community, from my hapu, my tribe, my iwi, the people of ourselves, caring for each other, looking after each other. So it was my nannies who first taught me who I was when I came home from Auckland, and I was living in, I can't even remember, I was Howick. I left Howick and came back here, and it was my nannies who embraced me, and he says, this is who you are, this is where you belong. And I was in my 30s when that happened, and I was a child on the land. And so then the fifth principle which I've gained for myself to help me reconnect to who I am and to what I'm doing is ringa kaha. Now ringa kaha is an old Maori battle principle, which is the strength of your arm. Essentially, you got to put in the effort. You put in the effort, trust your own commitment, and grow muscles, you know. And for me, growing muscles means learning, means putting in the sweat, means learning how to tie rope, all those little principles. So they said, first of all, learn those things, feel those things, and then the rest of it will happen. You don't have to be qualified at university. You don't have to go and get a degree. He said the first language that I had was the language of the spirit, you know, talking to the Whetu, and then the language of the land. So I can speak whenua better than I can speak te reo, you know, and the language of the way, the waters. And I can speak the way better than I can speak te reo. and then the language of your ancestry. Know that, and then we'll teach you the language after all of that. Because what's the point of learning to talk if you've got nothing worthy to talk about? If you talk about those things, there's mana. So learn those, and then you can talk about it later. So that's why my journey with the reo is now ongoing. It's getting better and better, but at least I have something in my heart to say, not just coming out of my mouth. A lot of people can speak fancy words, but there's no power and there's no mana in that word. So if I can only learn one Māori word with mana, then that's more valuable to me than an entire dictionary with no mana. And so I speak by my actions and by my hands.
I think I told you, so in Tasmania, Palawakani is the native language, and it's a recovered language because of colonial impact, right? And so one of the things they're doing, it's really interesting for it to return at this point of the decolonial experience, because they're actually restricting access to learning the language to Palawa people only. For that reason, that there are, you hear it, I'm back in New Zealand for a couple of weeks, I hear it coming out of the mouths of Pākehā newsreaders and whatever, and there is no mana behind it, right? They can speak fluent reo, right? And it's, the Palawa people don't want meeting rooms in like a business park named in language, because it doesn't have the power. It's like, as it's coming back, it's like, no, we're gonna bring this back into reality and custodian it in a way that's really responsible. And I like that, because obviously when I found out that was the language of country, I'm like, oh, I'll learn Palawakani, and then I look and go, it turns out I can't, and actually I get it.
there's different language. So I knew some old Maoris. When I mean old, they were in their 80s and that, and they were having a conversation, and they were talking about they're going to the Maori universities to learn how to speak Maori. Now they were talking in Maori about how they can't understand Maori because it's a different world, it's a different type of Maori language, and there are writings from of our old tohunga, our old shaman, who have says that the karakia, the prayers, the spells, the incantations that are spoke now don't carry the power of the old language. And so there is still two different types of language. There's a language that's infused with mana, and then there's the language that you just communicate with. I think it's respectful that you hear Māori being spoken on the news and things like that, but I also realise that, hang on a second, there's a lot more to the language than just saying some nice words to be politically correct, that there's a sacred language as well. And that sacred language is still being kept in reserve, and rightly so. And I think that might be, similar to what you were just mentioning. But yeah, so that's how I feel about where the language is and where it's going. And I'm finding that the words that are coming to my mind have more value because they're based upon these principles of mana. And I still struggle. I've tried to learn the reo with the books and with other people, and I've done it about 5 times, and it's not clicked, right? And I remember being in one of the classes saying, why am I learning about us 3 should go swim down the river? When we teach our children, the first things they learn is the language of love. They're awhi'd, they're cared for, they're praised. I says, I want someone to talk to me like that, I want to teach me like that. No one does that though, because it's a classroom setting and it doesn't sort of align like that. But so with my the Ariana and my newborn son, he's 10 months old now. Since he's been born, the language has flown between the 3 of us. So I struggled to remember karakias and prayers and things like that. But since he's been born, we've been doing it together. Bang, it's just coming. And I can see that, I now say that the reason why it took me so long to learn the reo was I had to wait for my son to come, because it was something that couldn't be done in a classroom. It had to be done as a family, and we're all learning this journey together. My son is growing up with more reo now at 10 months than I've had in my whole life up to now. But there's mana in that.
Absolutely.
And I love it. It's amazing. And I'm amazed at how much I'm retaining now. The timing has come. So I thank him for that. His name is Rehua, which is Antares in Scorpius, or Matawhero Lloyd, as we call it. That's the constellation. And Rehua came to me a year before he was born, every night at 4 a.m. when I was in our reclamation, I'd be woken up at 4 a.m. and I'd go stand outside, look up, and I could see Matataua Maui, or Scorpius, and the bright orange star in the middle was Rehua, or Antares. And I didn't know why, but for about a year, oh no, not a year, sorry, for about 3 or 4 months, I would keep getting woken up and I'd go out and I'd see it and I'd see it. And I didn't know any stories about that. So then I began to research, and then I found out that Rehua is the being closest to the creator, Io Matua. And that Rehua is where Tāne Nuiarangi climbed the 10 heavens and went, and he said to Rehua, how do we bring bird life to earth? And Rehua said, well, first of all, you can't just take my birds, you need food for them. So here I'm going to give you the seeds to go and plant the forests. And so it was Tāne who came from Rehua with the seeds for the first forest for the earth, Papatuanuku, so that birds could come and nest in them. And that was a year before I began my journey with the forest restoration, before I realised I was going to be doing that. And again, that was my way of being prepared, that if you're going to restore a forest upon the land, you have to go to the beings that first established those forests in the first place, which is Rehua. You have to understand the principles of creation and respect the approach, the tikanga, to restore the forest. You want to restore forest on your land? Well, you go right back to the fundamentals. You acknowledge the person from whom the forests come, Rehua. Then you will learn from Rehua so that you're ready to do the forest planting, which is what the last 2 years have been. And that's why when our son came, he now carries the name Rehua in honour of that whole journey and process. So no pressure on him, of course.
I was about to say, never too young to be put to work, never too young to be put to work in the project.
Exactly.
All right, shall we finish up, arguably speaking of stars, one of my favourite places in the whole pa.
Oh yeah, this is our telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah, still needs a bit more work in here, of course.
Obviously.
But
I was thinking about what you said about being fallow, right? Because Dr. Bayo Komalafe, who's a Nigerian philosopher I love, says that it's kind of like coming back to that healing at the speed of nature thing. There are times when humans have to be fallow because we have winter and we have spring, and that's just part. And if you're not doing that, you're working to this false industrial model of permanent efficiency, which will kill you. Right?
Exactly.
And so I get it.
Exactly. So, I mean, the rage right now is the maramataka, the lunar calendar, and the sort of seasons, and reacclimatizing ourselves as a society back to more of the ancient sort of cycles.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that long before the maramataka. I just didn't realise that what it was. Everyone just thought it was because I just didn't want to do things. Yeah. And I realise now, it's not because there's a time and a place, and there are times when I really get stuck in and bring it to the next level, and there are times when I need to let it sit and let it rest itself and stop pushing it. Because I don't have a right to push even the Pasite. The Pasite is its own entity and its own being, so it tells me that I need to give it a break, or you need to go away because we want to do our own thing every now and then, and now you can come back. And so I've learned that relationship with it, and I'm quite comfortable and happy with that. I had a wonderful experience here. Wow, it was so touching as we were putting in all these plants up on this hill. I'll get this feeling that you just need to sit and be still. And so I sat on this little hill over here, and I could feel the presence of the ancestors who saw what we were doing and acknowledged it. And they made an offering. It was a pure offering of water. They had came and they just offered water. And what's more precious, more valuable, and the most sustaining for life than water? And not diamonds and not gold and none of that. And they brought me water, and the water started to flow out of my eyes when I felt that honour. And so they've said that to me here a lot about water and the importance of it. Because in Maori, the word for water is wairua, The word for spirit is Whetu, which means water vessel. And so we carry the Whetu. We're a vessel that carries the sacred waters. And so I come to recognize and acknowledge them and thank them, because again, I can't do nothing if they don't approve. And they need me to remember them, because that's our relationship. And that's how we continue. And that's how they continue. And that's how I'll continue when my descendants remember me. And then we bring ourselves to each other. I love it. It's all cool stuff, right?
Yeah. So,
I think it is.
Yeah. So explain where we are and what these uprights are.
So these uprights are punga trees. This is our star observatory. So pretty much we light the fire in the middle.
Now we just climb up, and so I can get a... Yep, keep going.
And the posts sort of have a reflection on different star seasons and times. So I can look up and see when Matariki rises through this sort of portal over here. Then you get Orion coming up over here, and then you get Scorpius coming up through these periods. And so sitting here over years, we've been able to watch the transit of all of the constellations. So it points us to the heavens. It allows us to lift our gaze upwards, and then like when you were here and we did the ceremonies, it allowed us to send up the essence of our intentions, our hearts and commitments that we put into the offering, and then allow that to be carried up. And the pillars, I think, here take it and we give it as our offering up to the Creator. So yeah, there's a lot more I have to do yet on top of here, which is star mapping.
Oh yeah.
So our ancestors used to use star maps when they travelled the Pacific. And so the star maps and the current maps, there's two different types, and they are made out of reeds with shells, and then you could use that and you would get your bearings on where you were in the Pacific Ocean. So I'm going to do a grid star map on the top of these, so that when we look up, we can see the seasonal shifts and movements on here. And so as we understand that the idea of maramataka, or the Maori calendar, the lunar calendar, has to be relevant to where you are. Yeah. So you can't have one generic for everywhere, because we're at different longitudes and latitudes in the country. And so for the East Coast, this one will reflect the East Coast, and it'll guide us as to the times and the seasons. And so that's another little... They didn't do that in the old days, I don't think.
Well, so that I think they did that in the old days, right? Because part of the Polynesian reclamation of their own star law that happened in the 70s, that was brought in where it was kept alive in Micronesia. And how they would train their young navigators is they would have star maps on the inside of their huts, basically. So there'd be like lines of reed across, so that you would know the transits of different stars. And from like little babies looking up at the roof, looking up at the ceiling, they would learn the direction of them. So if you're doing that here, that's old.
There you go. There you go. So that's it. You know, I like that. I absolutely feel that. Also, we live in houses nowadays where you don't go outside a lot.
No.
A lot of our old whares are small, so you can't actually spend 8 hours a day inside of them. You have to actually get outside. And when you're outside, you're constantly able to monitor and look up more than we do nowadays, because we're inside, we've got artificial light which blocks out the stars. We don't get those sort of relationships to the heavens and the times and the seasons as intimately on a daily basis. And so this is my way of doing that. So I like what you've said about the reeds. So the precedent there.
There is ancient precedent.
That's cool as.
Yeah.
So that's the feelings that I've got to do that. That's
nice.
cool.
So finish off with the, this is a fire, I'm going to show you. We finish off the story of the fire and Standing Rock.
Oh yes, that's right. So my family and I had the fortune of going to Standing Rock when everyone was fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline. There was my mother, father, my two sisters, my niece and myself. And it made such a huge impact on us to see the indigenous peoples fighting to protect the purity of the waters. The black snake, you know, to kill the black snake. When we came home, we recognized the same story with us, because we have traditional oil that our ancestors used to use right here, just at the bottom of our pass site here. And there have been many who have attempted to take this from us, who've tried to take the oil. And so we've had frackers in the last 10 years who try to come in. And when we heard what the Lakota were doing to stand up to protect theirs, we felt we support that. So we had an opportunity to go. And then I went back again with another group of people, another group of Maori, and that's where this the haka with standing rock was a way of Maori being able to show solidarity by performing a haka, because that's what the frontliners were doing on a daily basis, standing up against you know, the security forces and getting shot with rubber bullets and tear gas. So they were doing a haka. So I went back over there and we did frontlining with the indigenous peoples there to show support. And they had council fires, 7 council fires, as a part of the ceremonial component. And when we came home, I asked if I could light a ceremonial fire in solidarity, and so that's what this was. And we had a group of, we put the word out, and we had people come, and all of those of us who went to Standing Rock came here, and we had some of our Native American friends who were here came and lit the fire. And then this became sort of sanctified at that point and pretty much established the pass site.
That's a big deal. So there were 7 fires at Standing Rock, and this is the 8th of the 7th fire. And it's as far as I know, the only Standing Rock fire not at Standing Rock.
I don't know if other iwi tribes did their own. I just know that, you know, straight after we came back, that we lit this fire, and it stayed alight for 8 days. We just let it burn continuously in connection with that, and now we light it under ceremonial purposes. And this is the really cool thing. When I first began this, I didn't have a lot of relationship with our relatives in Turtle Island. But I remember after doing a day's worth of work, sitting up on the hill while the sun was going down, and I could see hovering on out over the edge of the pass site numbers of people of different cultures, and it was a really blessing to receive this message that the pass site will bring people from all over the world, indigenous peoples and just peoples. And I could see a particular individual with a headdress, and so it was quite a touching experience. I had no idea what that would mean. So this was about 7 years ago, and then it was about 4 or 5 months later when I got invited to go to the Turtle Island, and we went visiting some of the native tribes, and that's where the journey that I had began with them. And then fast forward another couple of years, as a family we went to Standing Rock, and then fast forward a few more months I went back with the group. And then after Standing Rock, we've had about 1,000 Native American and First Nations peoples and indigenous peoples come visit the pass site in a capacity and relationship that I had not imagined would be, other than I was shown that when it's ready, people would come. And then for myself, I was given an opportunity to recognize that there are many places like this that will begin to be established throughout the world, where people will be able to connect on a spiritual, deep level, because we're all undergoing a shift and a change in this world as human beings, that we need to have our places of refuge, our safety spaces, our sacred spaces, and that there will be people drawn to do that in nations all over the place, even in Tasmania, and that we would all come to each other and find each other. And then that's the strengthening for what we're about to endure and what we're going to go through, and that we can inspire, encourage, uplift and support each other. We could learn from each other, and we can teach from each other, and that our places would be open to people who have the right heart. And that has been more than I ever anticipated. All I wanted to do was just to build a whare for my ancestors. I didn't anticipate any of what came, not at all. I was in IT, like I said. So you never know where your feet will lead you, right, when you begin this hikoi and let it walk you to where you need to be. But I've been grateful for all of it. So I also am, again, I want to give thanks to you, Gordon, and to the community for connecting hearts, for the support. When Rune Soup came here and had the retreat, there were blessings that were given which have blessed me, our whānau, our tribe, and the whenua directly because of what you did. Even in terms of resourcing and in plants and in being able to take it to the next level. So I acknowledge and I recognise the commitment and the heart of all our whānau around the world with Rune Soup who have prayed and who have put their hearts to bless what we're doing. And I hope that I can repay that either by being true to our kaupapa here, but also in the Wairua, letting that connection go back out. And then from the sacred fire to all of the fires in your hearts, that we're all one. So, so once again, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you all so much for that, and thank you, Gordon, for what you're doing. It's a blessing. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for saying so. Especially over the last couple of years, it's been nice in my mind to know that this place exists. I think it's one of those deep spiritual sanctuaries of and a beacon of hope for things that will come next. That when things get bad, I know, yeah, but Whetu Ariki still exists. Yeah. And it's really nice to know that for me that's been a source of sustenance to think that they're actually, when you're kind of like almost like alone in how you're thinking and going, God, stuff's pretty bad. You go, well, there are places in the world where maybe it isn't, where there's cause for optimism.
Absolutely.
And this is one of them.
Beauty is important to me, and when I look around, we have history, but that doesn't overwhelm the beauty of hope that I have and that I see. And with these two little hands and a clump of dirt and a little plant, hope is expanding and growing and growing and growing, and we can all do that. And we can appreciate the simplicity of nature, papatuanaku, ranginui, our ancestors. We just got to listen and connect with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to spin this around. It's, like I said, it's a wonderful place, and thank you so much for giving me another tour that we can share more widely with people, kind of listening and watching this. And do we want to go see the food growing bit first?
Wow. So this tōtara tree. Yep. So tōtara, of course, is historical to our area. It was the most significant resource. And that's the tree of life that I brought here to transplant. So that's an original, one of our sort of old seeds. It's regenerating. So our land is beginning a regenerative process on its own. And so we're replanting in all this area here so that it heals. We've got the waters. It's exciting.
It really is. Because let's do more. I realised we haven't been down here. Because last time I was here, the plan was for this to be like a demonstration garden.
Yep. So this still is our marakai. And we've got some, we put our kumara in here this season. We've all harvested it all at the moment.
Cool.
But when I first put the marakai in,
it's a little bit difficult with the grass and a crappy camera, so keep talking. I'm just going to show people that it's sort of like leveled.
It's hard to see. It's sort of terraced.
Yeah, terraced, like the Inca.
And that's rongo, the carving.
Okay.
Of cultivated foods, the atua.
And one of your fathers, I presume?
Yeah. Now, when I was encouraged to put the marakai on this side of the hill, it was because it would catch the sun. But I was also told that there's no water here. So you put water there.
Yeah.
So when you need to water your plants, it'll all run naturally to each other. So that's why, although this pond is a little bit of my own desire to have a nice place to swim in the summer, it was because I also needed to have water for the marakai.
Yeah.
So it's a journeying process. So we plant in here regularly. It's not, we haven't begun this season's planting yet, except for this kumara.
Well,
But
you told me there's planting on other
yeah, we've got
places.
other gardens and that too. This is more of a ceremony. Once we get this, is a ceremonial planting.
Yeah.
So it's a little different from this pure food.
Yeah.
Step by step.
No, exactly. And you know, we respond to the times, and more food at scale is probably a better use of that sort of resources and attention at the moment, right?
Yeah, so it's a bit rough over here. So, but next time you come back,
exactly.
There'll
be a waterfall.
All the plants in here would have been grown up. There'll be a nice little waterfall proper coming down here. Water flow, moving water is going to be great. Raupo. So this is where I want to put our raupo, to grow our raupo for our building. And I've got friends who have their own farms that they're creating their own self-resilience and that, and they've got a pond, and they're the ones who are providing the raupo, so we can grow our own here as well.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you this one before. I don't know if, probably not so much for the camera, but...
Would you want me to turn it off, or?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, guys. All right. We're back with Matawhero. Sorry about that. It's Dark Prince of Chaos Magic prerogative to get the secret magic stuff that isn't available yet on the open internet. But I just want to say,
only for premium members.
Well, not even that. Not even that. There isn't even a level for it yet. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. Once I'd switched the camera off and we had a chat, I was saying to Matawhero that in a very real sense, this place was the inspiration for Ani.Mystic, because he's doing something here that we don't have words and thoughts for yet, because it's new, but it's also ancient. It's like you have to, on the level of feeling, is how you realize the significance of this. It's like we were joking that it's a Maori Rivendell in a way, but it's a beacon and an emanator for Matawhero's ancestral land, but also for the world, for people who can hear and feel that there is still hope, and there are good things to come, and there's like a right way of being in the world, I think. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the tour once again.
Anytime, every time.
Yeah, every time, exactly. All right, thanks guys, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Obviously, you know, this is a bit special, and I'll see you in the next episode.